Hey Trailblazers, welcome to this last version, our last week of our series on the Trinity. If you haven't watched our previous videos, make sure to go in and like and subscribe. Catch those videos on the Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But today we're going to be talking about how all of them connect to one another. So stay tuned. We're going to roll the bumper right now. Hey guys, welcome back. We are so excited to be coming to the end of our Trinity series. If this is something that's been good for you, make sure that your parents have liked and subscribed, or maybe you can like and subscribe to our page, because we want to make sure that as we continue on, you continue to receive these amazing Trailblazer videos. We will not be able to do this without each and every one of you, and so we thank you for tuning in. It's been really, really fun. Next week we're starting Christmas, but before then I want to talk about the Trinity. Now the Trinity, like I said last week and the week before that and the week before that, is something that is really difficult for all of us to understand. It doesn't make a lot of sense to our feeble human brains, but I trust that we can get to some grain of truth together. Sound good? Great. Let's jump in. I want to read today from the book of Acts. And the book of Acts, is all about the early church. So the people who came, Jesus lived and died in first century Jerusalem, was resurrected in first century Jerusalem, which means that he was alive about 2,000 years ago. And right after he was alive, the people who knew him and the people who heard about him right after he had ascended to heaven all came together and they formed what's called the church. That's what the book of Acts is about. And one person in particular tends to be the protagonist. That means the main character, the hero of the book of Acts. He starts out as the villain and he becomes the hero. And if you joined us for our Thessalonian series, you already know this name. It's Paul. Paul is, in this story in the book of Acts, speaking to a group of people who are really smart. They spend all of their time thinking about really difficult things to think about. They're called philosophers. And these philosophers were in the capital, the main head place for philosophy in the whole history of the world, Athens, Greece. Athens, Greece is still a place today that you can go and visit, and you can learn about these philosophers on probably many other YouTube channels. But Paul is talking to them when he goes to them and he says, hey guys, I want to teach you about the God that I know. He's a God that is unknown to you. But he says this about God. He says in Acts 17, verse 28, you don't need to memorize this one, but you can if you'd like. It says, for in him, talking about God, we live and move and have our very being, as even some of your poets have said. You see, God is so much beyond just a big guy in the sky, and I know for many of you that's your understanding, and that's okay. He's so much beyond this Holy Spirit, the sustainer, as we talked about, that lives inside of you. He's so much beyond, God is so much beyond the historical person of Jesus, or the Redeemer, that we talked about 2 weeks ago, that joins us in our difficulties. God is beyond all of those things. God is in fact the very being, the very presence, which is all around us all the time. And so these three persons is what we call them. Kind of a silly way to say people, right? Persons. These three distinct manifestations of God, the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Sustainer, all exist together in this beautiful divine dance. And so I wanted to give you that illustration this morning, an illustration of a dance. When I was in college in South Carolina, of all places, I only went there for 1 year, but one of the most fun parts about my South Carolina experience was that they closed down this bar in Greenville, South Carolina every Tuesday. They didn't sell any alcohol, and they let in kids of all ages from about 16 years old up to like in their 20s and even maybe early 30s. And we all came together at what was called the Handlebar, and it was $2 to get in, and those $2 bought you entrance to be able to swing dance for as long as you wanted, until the whole place shut down around 11 o'clock at night. And this was one of the most wonderful experiences that I've ever had, learning how to swing dance. But the one thing that I had to learn about swing dancing, which is a little bit different than other types of dancing, is that swing dancing, there often is a lead. Most typically it's the man who is leading the dance, but very frequently in swing dancing, there is back leading, or the female or the second dancer will take over the lead for a period of time. They can lead going backwards. This is why they always said about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Fred Astaire was a great dancer, but Ginger Rogers could do everything Fred Astaire could do backwards in heels. She was quite amazing. It is an amazing feat to be able to back lead. But with the Holy Spirit, there is 3 people dancing all at once, and there is no clear leader because all parties are leading and following together. This is only possible because the Holy Spirit shares a will. I had one friend who I danced with the most. They just happened to be the one that showed me there, and this happened very frequently. You would dance about a third of the time with one person, and then for the rest of the time with others. But me and my partner in dancing learned over time so well how to lead and follow that neither of us was ever really leading or following. We were both leading and following in the kind of synchronized rhythms that we were able to know and guess. Now, as human beings, those rhythms almost certainly had a pattern, and they were repetitious, so we were kind of doing the same thing over and over, I imagine. But it didn't feel that way to us. It felt like there was no leader, like it was just naturally happening because we had the same goal in mind. And it was a wonderful experience. I wonder if for you, for a moment, you can imagine what that must be like. To dance with someone and you don't really, the dancing is happening, you're not really thinking about how it's happening, but there's a constant synchronization of movement. That is how the Holy Spirit and God the Father and Jesus, or the Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, are said to function in Christian theology. They're all working together at the same time in a synchronized way to bring goodness and wholeness to the world. And that divine dance is something that we are invited into, that is happening around us all the time. It's happening in the ways that the trees grow very slowly. It's happening in the ways that the trees lose their leaves at this time of year. It's happening in the way that the snow falls. It's happening in the way that we talk to one another. It's happening in the way that our very bodies are formed, the way our heart beats. That divine dance is constantly going everywhere around us all the time. And the good news in this for you and me is that we get to see it whenever we look around. Whatever we see through the eyes of people looking for the Redeemer, Creator, and Sustainer. And that's the good news. God, friends, is with you. He is the very presence, or God is the very presence in which you live, you move, and you exist. That means you have your being. God is all around us all the time. And because God is so much bigger and grander and beyond us, beyond even what we're able to understand, you might feel lost right now. That's okay. I'm a little lost right now too, and I do this for a living. I'm a pastor. I'm supposed to know these things, but I get lost in this. The important thing to remember is that because God is always around us, we can always join into that dance. We can always join into what God is doing simply by looking at the needs of the world, the places where we need to step in, whether that's a helping hand to a friend, whether that's being cautious and following guidelines of local and state authorities to keep us all safe, whether that's sending an email to a grandma or grandpa just thanking them for being loving. Maybe it's helping a little brother or sister in a time when your parents don't have their normal childcare in place. Whatever it is, a kind word. You can join God in this amazing divine dance. And I hope, friends, that each and every one of you would begin to experience the amazing sensation that you don't even feel the leading anymore, that it just becomes natural. It just becomes intuitive, second nature, dancing with God through your life. That's all I have for you this morning. I'm so excited that we get to keep moving on, that we're going to jump into Christmas next week. I care about each and every one of you. Remember to stay tuned, because we have a lot more coming. Bye for now.